What's a writer's fiction roundtable?
Our friend Laurel Thomas can help us figure that one out. All right, welcome.
Welcome, Laurel. We're so thrilled to have her back with us today.
We're so good to have you here. We had you on this podcast before, and it's always been so good.
Mhm.
And how are you doing?
Great, great. I'm so happy to be on board with you too and excited about talking about some good stuff that's going to move writers forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, now, Laurel, you are an award-winning author. Tell us about what is
Your specialty?
your specialty?
My special sauce. Well, I was a nonfiction writer for probably 25 years. And then, if I give you too many dates, you'll figure out how long I've been doing this, which is a long time. But when I started fiction, thought, I would love to start writing novels. I thought, how hard could it be? I've written for many, many years. It can't be that hard. Yeah, it was hard. It was a whole nother world, a whole nother learning curve. And now that I made it, I'm very glad that I did because I love storytelling. It's probably my favorite thing in the world. So I started with River's Call, which was my first debut coming of age. It's just the sweetest little story about a young girl who lives in Mississippi and kind of a loser girl. And I practiced everything I knew I put, which, was kind of a laboratory, put into that novel. Then continued on this fantasy series, which I'm finishing up the third one of that series, because I had these big ideas about our gifts and how did our gift look. I mean, what did they look like? Just ordinary people. And why were they so critical for our world? And so I don't know, somehow they landed in fantasy. And so I had When Stars Brush Earth and Stones of Promise. And then Her Name is Gatekeeper will be coming up pretty soon.
Oh, that's
What?
fantastic. I love what you're talking about there. And I've heard you talk about this before where you've talked about the themes of your books, that is a lot of times what drives your books. You start with the themes or you start with some kind of inspiration and then you kind of go, well, what would this look like in this fantasy world? And
Yeah.
can you talk about that initial idea and how you bring that to life? I think that's so fascinating.
Sure. Each one of them have begun with just a seed of an idea. I'll just throw out Gatekeeper since it's the one I'm working on. But I've always been fascinated by Rahab in the Book of Judges. I really want to meet Rahab. I think she was such a cool lady. And she was really an unlikely gatekeeper. You know, God's people needed to get across into the promised land. And yet there was this ginormous victimizing culture that stood between them and that promise. So I thought, well, it would be very cool to write a story about an unlikely gatekeeper. And so Giselle kind of came out of that. And of course, every one of these ideas, even though they seem kind of lofty, kind of cool, they have to be framed in a good story with compelling characters. So, it sounds kind of easy for me just to say, gatekeeper, but it's taken time to craft a riveting story with a main character who's very flawed and who really fights against everything that's going to set her free and others in the process. So, yeah, I guess you have to be a novelist to enjoy that kind of thing, but it's kind of my ice cream.
Well, and with fantasy as well, I admire fantasy writers so much because they are not only creating great characters, they're not only creating great story and plot, but they are having to create the setting from
Yeah,
scratch.
you're creating whole worlds.
You're creating worlds in universes and social structures that are not, you're having to just create that and then create this story within that.
Yeah. Yes, and probably mine are not, they're pretty light fantasy. So when Stars Brush Earth is actually hooked into a historical period of time, it was pre-industrial England, basically. And so I like to frame my fantasy with some realism. Um, I know there's a name for that. I'm trying to think of it. But anyway, I like to hook it into something that is familiar. And it seems, for me, it seems to attract non-fantasy readers. You know,
Mhm.
I don't know that, like, I have a lot of fantasy writing friends. Um, but I really, my audience, I would like to reach outside of that group and grab people who want to think about maybe an idea in a new way.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and then, of course, with the supernatural element, um, fantasy is very conducive to dragons and, manifestations of, you know, evil, but also manifestations of good,
Yes.
of the power of gifts that we carry.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I do love fantasy, and I love Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, but I do try to root mine somewhat into a time period or a setting that is based in reality.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and I kind of like that because you're right. It helps people who maybe aren't normally fantasy readers to go ahead and feel like, okay, this novel is grounded. It's grounded in something I can identify with, right? I like historical fiction, or I just like regular everyday fiction. And then when you throw that fantasy element in there, or that supernatural element in there, you're able to craft it in such a way that people are just able to go along with it and go, okay, yeah, I can see this, right? This is only one step maybe removed from the reality that I know, and that's kind of cool. And so they'll just go with it, and it becomes just a very fun experience. Yeah,
Yeah. What's the
Well,
plan?
yeah,
well, you do it well. And we're so excited because you are one of our newest trainers in the Writing Momentum membership.
that's right.
So we are so excited to introduce you to the people who are, people who are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, but also to our members in our membership site, which for those of you who are not familiar with that, we just started a membership site. We've just opened it up,
Hmm.
and it's only $25 a month. We've worked really hard to make it very affordable for everyone. But Laurel is coming on, and her specialty that she's bringing is her writers roundtables, which are for fiction. And so tell us about those.
Yeah, and these are live events too. So,
These
so
are
we,
live
we have a lot
events.
of training there in the membership. That's recorded video, and we are recording your roundtables. But when you do your roundtables, they're live when you do them. So
Yeah.
people are actually able to come and participate and be a part of this, right? So yeah, tell us first of all, what is a writer's roundtable? Because I suppose I could hear that word and think it's 10 different things, right?
So true. So it is a type of forum, but it's more than a discussion forum. So I have combined a number of elements. There is, I offer teaching on a specific craft element every roundtable. And then we open to discussion and questions about that craft element. And then often, if people want to, we will apply that craft element and share our writing and share feedback on it. So it takes a little bit of courage, to go to that third step, but actually that's the step that I love. And so, yes, it's very relational. It's very, yeah, I mean, it's not really, I think I've done small groups for so many years, and I love the fact that we are really in a group of people who you can't plan their responses. We can't plan their questions. And yet every time, by the time we finish, I feel richer as a writer. And I feel like it's a platform that's really effective for writers, not just for community, but also for their skill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have been to a few of your roundtables, and I'm looking forward to coming to more of them because Chris and I talked a few weeks ago in our podcast about finding safe spaces as writers,
Hmm.
as we are growing in our writing craft and in understanding publishing, in understanding marketing, that we find these safe spaces where we can learn without judgment or harsh criticism. And I that is so evident in your roundtables. When I have
Mm.
come, I've heard you're very gracious. You know, you've got experienced writers there, you've got new writers there, and everybody is included and everybody is welcome and everybody is free to share. So I commend you on creating a safe online space where people can come and learn what are really very there are times that when you've done these, the ones that I have been to, these are not just beginner elements. This is that rich side. This isn't just the storytelling 101. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into what does the one we went to yesterday, and we're going to be talking about this on an upcoming episode here, but about that internal life of your character, understanding the layers for your character. That's not something that you begin with when you're just starting to write fiction.
Mhm.
So, yes, so I am so thankful that you do that. Can you give us some ideas about? I talked about this one, the internal life of a of your characters. Well, what are some other topics that you've touched on as you've done these?
So I would like to think that my special sauce is taking very difficult concepts and breaking them down in such a practical way that
Hmm.
because I am made that way
Yeah.
basically. So well, the last one that we did was really fun. We It was all about characterization, and we usually do it like in a unit. So we'll do several sessions about developing characters. But we were like, you can build your own character bank, right? I mean, think of the most interesting people that you know. And it was like, we're not going to use names. This isn't going to be slanderous. This is just interesting people. And we talked about, what does their exterior layer look like? Like, what's their
Hmm.
personality, their opinions? What does it just, what do they look like when you first meet them? But then let's investigate what's that inner layer? What it would be their motivations maybe about life or goals or dreams. But then the really fun part is the hidden part. And the part that you really have to speculate on as a writer or get to know as a friend, because we all have those three layers. And so when we become self-aware and other aware, it helps our writing. It helps that one of our ladies talked about this guy who came in. He was homeless, and he needed a haircut, and she was like, sure, I'll give you a haircut. Well, she started talking to him. Nobody else wanted to cut his hair, but she said he was brilliant, and he had fallen upon hard times, and he just had this wealth of knowledge and was just incredibly witty. So, all of these things we have in our own lives that we can draw on and become our own personal banks, so to speak.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I could see how you could draw an entire story just out of what you just said there, right? I mean, that seems like the seed of a really good novel.
Here's a one
Yes.
person
Yeah.
who has this witty
The
sense of
hairdresser
humor.
and a
Yes.
hairdresser's,
Chris's
discovers
creative
his potential.
juices.
Yeah, yeah. It gets my creative juices going. Okay, so now let's pretend though that we were in your roundtable, your workshop for this. So you started off the workshop, you've given a little bit of training and teaching, and
Yes.
then you kind of say, okay, we're all gonna put pen to paper now and maybe write a scene. Is that the kind of idea?
A lot of times we don't do that until like the end. So we
Mm-hmm.
we end up talking about that concept Like I was one of our characterization sessions, we talked about formative childhood memories.
Mm.
And so they all just wrote down the first childhood memory that came to mind. And so they just wrote that down. And whoever wanted to could share. But usually we talk about the concept, we answer questions, we give examples from, a lot of times I'll give examples from other stories that I've read, or they'll give examples. And then we will do the application probably at the end or
Yeah.
even in another session.
That's really good though, because that allows you to have time to marinate with it and really think about it, and not only what do you think about it and what do I think about it, but what do other people in the room think about this topic, so that it can kind of help change the way we think about it too, and maybe see things that we hadn't seen before, because it becomes this collaborative effort to learn about this topic,
Yes.
right? And through that
Yeah,
collaboration, then suddenly it's like, oh, I've got a villain in my story, and he has no backstory, right? He has no layer. I've given them no layers, and now I realize I've got to weave that into who my character is, and it makes your story so much richer.
exactly. Any level player can do that. It's a
Yeah.
matter of going back and weaving some of those things in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Laurel, what about the brand new writer who is saying, I don't want her to call on me?
Oh, yeah.
They're the student that wants to sit at the back of the classroom. They want to sneak in after it's already started and just sit there and listen and absorb. Are they able to do that?
Of course, but this is okay. This is funny because just observing writers, it doesn't take long for them to get over that because
Right.
we want to talk.
It's true.
We
It's
want
true.
to say what our story's about. Or, I mean, generally writers want to communicate. So I know that I have some people, just after speaking in conferences who would like to come but are too shy to come.
Mm-hmm.
I know that exists.
Yes.
Yes.
But once they get in, we do our best as a community to just be embracing the fact that we are creatives who are on maybe not the same path, but we are on a path that we love together. And it makes us kind of a tribe. It kind of makes us a community. And so and we don't really read that much, Chris, I mean, unless people want to share something rich, but they don't have to. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a way out for people if they are like, yeah, I don't
Yes,
want to
so
do
you
that.
can share things if you want, or if you don't want to be vulnerable that day, you don't have to. This again goes back to the idea that this is a safe space. You can come, you can learn, you can participate as little or as much as you want. But this is, what I love about this is that I have been in course writers conference classes that are kind of like this, but they usually can't get that in depth because they don't, they're not continual over time. They're just, a 45-minute session that you go to at a conference and then you're on to the next thing. This is deeper than that. But I've also been to college courses to get masters in writing and that sort of thing that are like this. You sit in a group and you discuss these very rich techniques and really get a deep understanding of what they are. And boy, that's
It's
so
gold.
great that that we have access to this and that you're willing to teach some of these things, because I think that's just it's so good.
Well, and I love the fact that you're doing, you said you're doing units
Oh,
where you're maybe talking about characterization over a few meetings, because
They-
for many introverts, they have to think about it, right? They
Huh?
you talk about it one week, maybe they don't say anything, but throughout the week, it's going through their mind and they're processing, so that then when they come back next week, if you're still talking about characterization, they're going to be like, well, they might be willing to pipe up because they've had time to kind of
yes.
flesh it out in their minds and articulate it. So I think that's a great thing too, that there are these units. And I mean, you're talking about, if you do that's 2 hours of study of a topic like this of a fiction craft principle.
That's also interactive. It's not just talking at you, right? It's
Right.
receiving back and forth.
Yeah, so that's beautiful.
Right.
But let me ask you, so I know we've got some nonfiction writers out there who are listening who are going, well, that's not for me because I'm a nonfiction writer. Go ahead and tackle that one because you were a nonfiction writer.
Yes, I mean, I've been doing Writers Roundtable since COVID. So we have nonfiction writers, a good mix. And I kind of struggled with that, but then I realized, Melanie Hamry really mentored me. And I believe that storytelling techniques enrich any style of writing. And we have people writing memoir, which lends so well to storytelling, and inspirational self-help, which is always made, I think, more relatable with storytelling at least, segments throughout the manuscript. So we don't, yeah, I think that we do pretty well, with that mix. Um, but people would just have to come on board and see if it was helpful. I think that the craft elements lend well to either or both.
Well, yes. And I know Melanie, who's also a friend of ours, she has taught on this podcast about using fiction elements in her nonfiction because she does use that quite a bit. And story is such an important part of nonfiction. I mean, I write primarily nonfiction. Chris does quite a bit of, he's done everything, but
A little bit of both.
a little bit of both. But those story elements are so powerful for nonfiction and so necessary because you're going to have some readers who may not remember what you taught them, but they will remember the story that you told them. And that story is where the nugget is. That's where the teaching comes. And for that type of learner, that's where they're going to glean what they need.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
This has been so good. Okay, so if people want more teaching like this, you're going to have it right in the Writing Momentum membership. So we've got a special link right below this video, around this video somewhere, that you can click on and you can come and you can join this membership. It's only $25 a month. Think about that, less than $1 a day each month in order to support and enrich your writing career, help you get your writing done faster. We've got our co-working sessions every single week. Laurel does a couple of these roundtables every single month. And then we have dozens and dozens of recorded videos and trainings and all kinds of things you can take advantage of. So be sure to check that out. Invest in your writing. I think you'll find it totally worth it. And then also check out Laurel's books, Laurel Thomas, on Amazon. Yeah.
Yes.
So I love that you're doing this with us, Laurel, because we don't do all this writing in solitary, right? In this day and age, we do writing. How do we do it, Gena?
We do it together.
We do it together.
Because together we have writing momentum.
Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next week.